Hello and welcome to Stuff They Should Have Taught You in School. I'm your host, of course, Monsui. Today's episode, How to Plan for Retirement. Realise this, that you cannot rely on the company that you work for to feed you after you finish working. You cannot rely on the government. You cannot rely on the state pension. You have to rely on yourself. Before we get into it, quick thank you to everyone listening and subscribing. And thank you for leaving a review. Thank you for sharing the podcast and helping other people learn the stuff they should have taught you in school. Also, disclosure, these are done in one take, so you may have long pauses and things like that. Anyway, how do we plan for retirement? Firstly, you've got to realise that this is a need, and it's very, very, very likely that you will need to take it into your own hands. I checked my state pension recently, and they reckon I could live off £800 a month. Now, if you actually account for inflation, and you say, okay, today I would rent, if I was in retirement, I would probably have to rent a room in a shared house for £500 a month, bills included, and then I would have £300 a month left to eat, pay for fuel, pay for my car, pay for insurance, pay for road tax. Want to go out, if you want to go out to Nando's or McDonald's, or even McDonald's, you probably wouldn't even be able to afford that. You're just going to be having to live off rice, plain rice the whole time, and ketchup. Then you also think, okay, during retirement, surely I should go on holiday once or twice. Well, no, not on £800 a month. So this is a need that needs to be fulfilled. So, how do we plan for retirement? We need to work backwards. We realise that our standard pension and the company we work for would potentially just drop us at any minute, and that the money that they give us is not enough. So we need to work backwards. How much do you need? The easiest way, I'll just get straight into it. I'm not going to mess about here. The easiest way to plan for retirement is to invest in passively managed index funds. Invest a certain amount of money every single month until retirement, essentially. So if you're 30 years old, you might want to put in £150 a month for 30 years. And what you find there is, let's just get and because what happens here is that if you invest regularly into the index funds, which is essentially the whole of market, you're diversifying risk because you're investing in many, many different companies. You've got less fees because it's not actively managed. You don't have a manager there swapping and trading funds, which you pay their salary. And also, every time you sell a share and buy a share, there's fees involved. So you basically have compound interest, right? So if you had £150 a month, and the average return is about 8%. You had £150 a month over, and you can just Google this, find one on the internet, over 30 years, from age 30 to age 60. You would have invested £54,000, but the interest you would have earned is £170,000. Now, the earlier you do this, the better. So if I was 20 years old and I invested £150 a month for 40 years at 8% interest, I would have invested £72,000. So not that much more, 54 to 72. But the interest I would have earned is £450,000, which is like over double what it was. Now, why is this? It's because it's exponential. Simple as that. Is if you ever seen a log curve or exponential growth curve, you basically, it's very slow. There's hardly any growth for the first 10 years, 20 years, but then it picks up like a snowball effect, just get bigger and bigger and bigger, quicker and quicker and quicker. So how do we actually understand how much do we need to actually retire? Well, you can use a thing called the 4% rule. Now, it could be outdated, but it's still a good metric. You could even adjust that percentage and lower the percentage as a contingency. But what this essentially says is, if you want whatever money you want to retire on, say £40,000 a year, you divide it by 4% and it gets the asset value you need to have in that stock, in those stocks. So you could basically do a backwards calculation and say, okay, if I want to retire £40,000 a year, divide it by 4%, £1 million. I need £1 million in my stocks and shares account. How do I get £1 million? Well, how much do I need to invest at 8% a year? How much do I need to invest per month to get that amount, essentially? And you play around with the compound interest calculator until you find the right amount. Then you invest that every single month. And I would say invest it as soon as your payslip comes in. That money should go out, so you can't spend it. You're not tempted to spend it. So that's the easiest way. Anyone can do this. Just spend half an hour researching index funds, passively managed index funds. And what it does is it basically you essentially just invest into many, many different companies in one go. Rather than, and this is the second option, is to invest purely in dividend stocks. But here the risk is higher because you are investing directly into one company only, or multiple companies. Whereas in an index fund, you might be investing into 100 companies in one go or more. But you can target these specific companies for dividends. Now, you do actually get index funds that are specifically, targeting dividend stocks. But you essentially, the same thing here is you're wanting to retire off the dividends. So, number 3 is property. Now, property, it can be hard. There's a lot to know, and there's a lot that can go wrong. But it is a great investment because you have two sides of the things. You have the capital growth, which on average property doubles every 10 years or so. So if you bought a property right now for 100k and you kept it for 30 years, it would be worth, after 10 years it would be worth, if it was 10 years it would be worth 200, after 30 years it would be worth 400k. And if you had paid off the mortgage on a repayment mortgage, then that you would have that unencumbered, what they call unencumbered, which means that whole 400 grand is basically yours until you sell it and then pay tax on it, and then you're left with the capital lump sum. But then at the same time, you are renting that property out, and you are getting a return of 5-10% ROI. But like I said, it's not for everyone. It requires a lot of work and a lot of knowledge initially. It can be passive, but you still need to know what the hell you're doing. And there's a lot of property scams out there and things like this as well. And it can go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong, as I've seen it happen to some people before. But if you wanted the benefits of property, but without all of that headache, you would have a lower return, but you still get some benefits, is you want to invest in REITs, REIT, which is basically real estate investment trusts. So you buy them like a normal stock, but the company that you're buying into just owns a whole load of property. And you don't have to worry about boiler maintenance, tenants not paying, and all this stuff. You are essentially just investing in a small proportion of that company, which would represent a small amount of property. Simple as that. You have to understand, we'll recap quickly, you have to understand, firstly, that you need to take this into your own hands. Now, you may think, oh, it's depressing, but really, it's liberating, because why am I going to put my life into someone else's hands that, in many cases, I wouldn't even know who they are. I wouldn't even know if they've even got morals or ethics or whatever. I wouldn't even know if they're trustworthy. But at least you know you can trust yourself, because you tell your boss, I'm coming to work on Monday at 9 a.m. and you do most of the time, or I hope anyway. Or you tell yourself, I need to go to the toilet, and what do? You go to the toilet. Or you tell yourself, I need to eat, and what do? You eat. So, you tell yourself, I need money to survive after retirement, and what do? You invest, and you plan for your retirement. So it's actually liberating, because you're in control, not someone there or here or wherever they may be. So there's various ways you can retire. As I said, I've gone through it. So the easiest one, passively managed index funds. Invest every single month for X amount of years, and you'll probably be okay. Anyone can do this. It's so easy. Literally just search it up. Index funds, passively managed index funds. Some good companies are Hargreaves Lansdown, AJ Bell, and Vanguard. I'm not sponsored by any of these. However, I do personally use all three. You could also invest in property. If you don't like the headache of property, you could invest in REITs. You could also invest in dividend stocks and retire off the dividends. But the bottom line here is that you need to do something. You can't rely on the state pension. And the sooner you start, like I showed on the compound interest calculator, if you invested for 30 years, you would invest £54,000 and get 170k in interest. So you would have the whole 54 plus 170k. But if you invested over 40 years, just 10 years extra, you would have invested £72,000 and you would have £450,000 of interest, and you combine them, you would have both of those amounts, and the total 500 and whatever, 520 is essentially what you would have in your account. And then using the 4% rule, you could easily retire off 20k. You could easily withdraw 20k a year out of that and be fine. Much better than £800 a month, isn't it? And it's well within your capabilities to do it. I'll do another episode on a little bit more about this and how you could actually take advantage of your current pension to invest and take control of it so that you can actually retire. But you have been listening to Stuff They Should Have Taught You in School. My email address is monsui@icloud.com. If you have any questions about today's episode, or you feel a little bit unclear and you need a little bit more help, a little bit more guidance, by all means email me. I'm not going to charge you for my time, like I don't charge anyone for this podcast currently, and I will help you as much as I can. Or email me for any topic requests, feedback, if you want to come on the podcast, or if you want to say hi, or if you want to say, okay, bye, I hate your podcast, I hate you, Monsui. So, but I don't know why you would take your time out of the day to do that. I also thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing and leaving a review and sharing it. Please do share it with your mates. They also know how to retire, and they also aren't left to their own devices. I mean, like, look, go into your supermarket today. I guarantee you will find someone that should be in retirement, but they are not. I guarantee you'll find someone, and it's sad. It's just sad that we're not taught this. We're not trained for this. No one helps us with this. That's why I've got this podcast, to help you. Because somehow I learned about it at a young age. Somehow, I thank God that I got into this sort of continuous learning, and I learned about all these different things, which now I help other people with. Anyway, you've been listening to Stuff They Should Have Taught You in School. I will see you on the next episode.